Picture this: a dusty road, a crackling old radio station playing hits from the 70s, and a man named Travis driving away from everything familiar, leaving not just a city behind, but an entire life. He's successful, charismatic, once a real-life lumberjack, now the owner of an investment firm. But beneath his calm exterior, a storm is raging. The woman he loved could turn every head in the room with a single glance. He thought he had found the one, thought they could weather any storm together. But betrayal didn't come from the outside. It slept beside him. And now he faces more than just heartbreak. He must figure out how to survive it without losing himself. In a world of truth and deception, love and manipulation, Travis has only one goal left: to find what's truly worth holding on to, or finally let it go. Greetings, my dear viewer. Please tell me which city and country you're watching this video from. Maybe you're watching me from a small town or a gigantic metropolis. Write about it. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends. It will make me very happy. Let's get started. Loving an extraordinarily beautiful woman is no easy task. Her magnetism draws the eyes of everyone around, and it feels as if the entire world covets her. Maybe it's just ego speaking, but the pain of betrayal, both from disloyal friends and half-hearted lovers, only strengthens my belief in what I feel. Each new disappointment simply cements the truth I already hold. When you fall hard for a woman of rare beauty, even the smallest glance from her carries a weight of its own. It felt almost poetic that a soft tune from the 70s floated from the speakers of a barely functioning FM station as I made my way from Denver to Santa Fe. I didn't have a single acquaintance in Santa Fe. My network, family, friends, business partners, all had roots firmly planted in Denver, where I proudly held season tickets for the Colorado Avalanche. Unlike Denver, Santa Fe isn't exactly known for its hockey culture. My company, with 6 established offices in Denver, had just launched a new branch in Santa Fe, housed temporarily in an apartment close to Presbyterian Medical Center. Adding another bit of irony to the mix, I was brought up Methodist. But perhaps I should rewind and start from the beginning. My full name is Travis Rockwell, but most people simply call me Trav. While many of my classmates headed off to schools like Northwestern, I spent 3 years swinging an axe in the lumber business. That's right, I was a bona fide lumberjack, a fact that eventually earned me my nickname. I still keep all my old logging gear, and my Harley-Davidson, a 2002 Softail Standard, remains in pristine condition. Back when I was married, my wife and I would take long road trips on that bike, but those rides are part of my past now. Aside from my logging years in Oregon, Denver has always been home. After returning from Oregon, I went to work for my Uncle Mike, who owned a respectable investment firm. Uncle Mike also paved the way for me to enroll at the University of Denver, where I earned my finance degree. 12 years ago, when he decided to retire, I bought the firm from him. At the time, we operated 4 offices. Under my leadership, we added 2 more locations and grew our team from 26 employees to 31. Even when the market hit rough patches, we stayed true to our clients and weathered the storms. Now, about my ex-wife, there's a story there worth telling. Jenna Rowland first crossed my path during high school, though we didn't move in the same circles back then. I was the rough-around-the-edges hockey player, and she was the sharp, driven soccer star and academic standout. We barely interacted. I wasn't unattractive, but with my long brown hair and gruff manners, I fit the typical hockey player stereotype, punctuating every other sentence with "damn." The hockey community tends to be a close-knit bunch, and our families often bonded through the shared experience. We sometimes felt like outsiders to the broader social scene, which might explain why Jenna and I never really connected during those years. Jess, short for Jenna, was breathtaking. Her vivid red hair, lithe build, and brilliant green eyes made her impossible to ignore. Her maternal grandmother had immigrated from Ireland back in the 1950s. Jenna easily could have dated any boy she chose, Yet she avoided the high-profile athletes, whom she thought were often lacking in substance. She preferred keeping her social circle small, dating here and there, but never getting tangled with the stars. It wasn't until 3 years after my return to Denver that our paths crossed again. By then, my years of logging had added some serious muscle to my frame. I first spotted her at one of my men's league hockey games. Tessa, who was dating our goalie Mike, had gotten into hockey and often came to watch, sometimes dragging friends along. One evening, Brandon, one of my teammates, nudged me mid-warm-up. "Hey, Trav, isn't that Jenna Rowland?" he asked. "Sure looks like it," I answered, surprised to see her so close to the rink. "She's hanging with Tessa. Bet Tanner's girlfriend brought her." Like any competitive guy, I turned it up on the ice, racking up 2 goals and an assist, hoping she'd notice. After the game, as I was hauling my gear out, I heard a voice behind me. "Hey, Travis. Great game. You're not going to ignore an old schoolmate, are you?" Jenna said, flashing a smile. I froze for a second. "Sorry, Jenna. Didn't realize we were actually friends back then." "Good to see you, though," I replied, setting my bag down and offering a handshake. "I guess I've always been better with a stick and puck than with words." She shook my hand, still smiling. "Maybe if you spent a little less time on the ice, you'd have noticed I thought you were all right," she teased. "But wow, what is that awful smell?" I cringed. "Hockey bags have their own distinct aroma," I admitted. "I'll just chuck mine in the Jeep, spare you from it," I said, heading toward my parked vehicle. She looked a little disappointed, but I didn't understand why. After all, we barely knew each other. Climbing into my cherry-red, fully restored 2002 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, I was greeted by Brandon jogging up. "Yo, Trav. Heading to O'Connell's for a drink?" Jess is coming too. She was wondering if being hot turned her into a snob. "Bro, you've got a chance. Don't screw it up." As my grandpa Mitchell used to say, I might not be the prettiest, but I'm no dummy, so I agreed. I showed up early, grabbed a beer, and slid into a booth. When Jenna walked in, she came straight over to me. "Hey, Trav. That's your nickname, right? I'm sorry if I seemed a little harsh before. Your bag definitely stinks, but honestly, I'd really like to sit down and chat, minus the sweaty gear and the ketchup fumes." "Sounds great, Jess," I said, genuinely curious to hear more about her life. The next few hours felt like time had hit the pause button. We swapped stories, each buying rounds for the other. She talked about her years since high school, attending UCLA to major in marine biology, working at the Southern California Marine Institute, learning to surf, and eventually returning to her beloved Colorado mountains. Now, she was on her way to becoming a middle school math teacher. Jenna listened closely as I told her about my logging days and my investment firm. She loved the Jeep and even laughed at the hockey lingo I taught her. "Hey, Trav, grab me another beer," she called out playfully at one point. "It's Trav, not Trav," I corrected, grinning at her. I shifted my focus back to the server, adjusting my posture slightly. Since you kept dodging me at the rink, I figured picking Trav was the best move. She gave me a sly grin. "Let's make this interesting," she said, her voice full of mischief. I stumbled through my reply. "Yeah, sounds good." With a playful wink, she tossed out, "Maybe." Before heading off, she hugged me tightly and slipped her number into my hand. "Call me," she urged, her voice low and teasing. "I'd love to take Greta for a spin if you're game." "That's been on my list," I answered, feeling a rush of excitement and nerves. It took me 2 whole days to finally call her, partly because I didn't want to come off as overeager. When I did, my voice cracked slightly with anticipation. "Hey, Jess, it's Travis. Want to go for a ride this Saturday?" She picked up fast, her voice buzzing with energy. "There's a festival in Leadville. But too bad, Trav, I've got other plans. I'm not dropping everything for some hockey guy." Caught off guard, I mumbled, "Oh, sorry, Jess. Maybe the weekend after?" Her laugh rang out, sharper now. "Screw you, Trav. Of course I want to go. What time?" How's 9 a.m.? I offered. I'll be ready, she said, chuckling softly, then paused. Wait, I don't even know where you live. You'll figure it out, Trav, she teased, before abruptly hanging up. I sighed, muttering, "It's Trav," under my breath, and quickly called Toby, who managed to snag her address from Trisha. When Saturday rolled around, I was knocking on her door in Golden exactly at 9. She opened it wearing denim shorts, a white tank top under a red and white plaid shirt, and a pair of black cowboy boots. A UCLA sweatshirt was knotted around her waist. Her grin was everything. "So, did I pass?" she asked, her voice silky. "Yeah, with flying colors." I grinned, handing her my extra helmet. We hit the road, the warm Colorado air wrapping around us, with the crisp mountain breezes cutting through just enough to keep it comfortable. We pulled over as we climbed into the foothills, layering up against the dropping temperatures. Jess tugged on the sweatshirt while I threw on my black leather jacket. "Next ride, I'm dressing like a real biker chick," she teased, nudging me. Leadville was an experience I wouldn't forget. We lost ourselves in the music, demolished some of the best tacos I'd ever tasted, and talked like old friends. The only downside was the way other guys couldn't seem to stop checking her out. Some tried to play it cool, others openly elbowed their dates, pointing her out. It grated on me, but Jess didn't seem to care. In fact, she encouraged it with a few playful winks and smiles. Still, the day was too good to let a little jealousy wreck it. When I dropped her off around midnight, we lingered at her door, sharing a few more laughs before she leaned in and kissed me lightly. "I had an awesome time, Travis," she said warmly. "Greta's a dream. You better call me again soon. Count on it," I said, smiling. "Thanks for not hauling along your hockey gear." She laughed and explained she liked calling me Travis. Everyone else might use Jack or Jackie, but she wanted to be different. That day kicked off a couple of months of casual dating, which gradually turned into something more serious. We texted or talked every day without fail. Jess finished her teaching certification and landed a job at a middle school nearby. 4 months later, we introduced each other to our families. I met her younger sisters, Molly and Bridget, her grandmothers, and her granddad. She got to know my parents, my brother Martin, my uncle Mike, and my grandparents. After a few family gatherings, Thanksgiving, then Christmas, I decided it was time to take stock of things. I set up a war council with Dad, Martin, and Grandpa Rockwell to get their advice. It was early January when we sat on my porch, bundled up around a fire pit, a bottle of 15-year-old Glenlivet on the table between us. "All right, here's the situation," I began. "Jess and I have been seeing each other for about 6 months, 4 of those exclusively. I really care about her, but before I take any bigger steps, I want you guys to be brutally honest. Martin, you first." Grandpa gave a nod. "I'll listen and jump in if anything needs pushing." Martin, despite being nearly 2 years younger, often seemed to have the wiser head. He'd just finished his master's in applied math and was always tinkering with systems and machines. A couple of years ago, when I got back from logging, Martin, then a senior at CU Boulder, had borrowed my bike for a week. When he returned it, he'd rebuilt the entire fuel system, and it ran better than new. "Trav," Martin began, always calm and methodical. "If I were breaking this down mathematically, I'd talk about flow rates and hydrodynamics, but I'll keep it simple. Jess checks a lot of the important boxes: stable job, solid character, loves you, and doesn't seem weighed down by past drama. Plus, you two seem to actually communicate well and work through disagreements." He leaned back in his chair, thinking. But, she's stunning. You're going to have to deal with other guys noticing. My bigger worry, though, is time. 6 months isn't nothing, but it's not a lifetime either. I'd say, wait another 6 before making any long-term commitments. You're both 27, no rush. Dad chimed in after a pause. You've always had a good head on your shoulders. You've built a strong business and kept your personal life clean. You'd be a great husband, no question. Jenna seems fantastic, but like Martin said, take it slow. Your mom and I had a few false starts before we figured it out. A little more time for them to grow closer certainly wouldn't be a bad thing." His attention shifted toward Grandpa Rockwell, the eldest and wisest among us. Settling deeper into his chair, Grandpa leisurely sipped his whiskey, his gaze lost somewhere in the direction of the far-off mountains. After a long moment, he caught my eye and said, "Looks might only reach the surface, but true ugliness sinks into your very soul." Without elaborating, he took another drink and turned his eyes back toward the horizon. There was a haunting gravity to his words, and just as I opened my mouth to press him for more, my dad shot me a subtle warning glance to stay quiet. Grandpa wasn't finished yet. "Travis," he said, "Jenna is a sweet girl, no doubt about that, and beautiful too. I've watched the two of you, and it's plain to see you're in love. She's got plenty of good traits, but there's a pattern I can't ignore. She craves attention." Grandpa paused, taking another slow sip, the mountains still holding his gaze. "She needs to be the center of everything, which can make her seem childish, even self-absorbed. She can't sit still, always chasing interaction. I think it stems from a lack of discipline growing up. Your father, on the other hand, was a 70s kid, wrapped up in the whole rock and roll era. I didn't get it at first, but one day in '79, I finally understood after hearing a song he was blasting, Bob Seger's Hollywood Nights. Dad interjected, correcting him, "It's Hollywood Nights, Dad. Bob Seger." Grandpa gave a small nod. "Right. The song tells about a young man falling head over heels for a beauty queen. One line struck me. She was born with a face that could get her anything she desired. That boy saw her and lost all reason. That's when it clicked for me. And that's the warning I'm giving you now. Jenna's looks give her a lot of power." He shifted his attention back to me, locking eyes. "She knows it too, whether or not she uses it all the time. And that's the danger you need to face, Travis. Once you're married, will she flirt just because she can? Even if she stays loyal, other men will pursue her. How much will you be able to handle? Will she respect your relationship enough to turn them away? I can't answer that. But here's my advice. Don't rush." Leaning forward, Grandpa's voice grew more serious. "Take 6 months. Ask your uncle for some time off and head out to Oregon. Work in the timber camps, but bring Jenna along. Get away from everything familiar, friends, family, distractions, and see if the two of you can really build a life together. She can substitute teach to keep busy. Your Uncle Mike won't be thrilled about losing you for a while, but I'll smooth things over. Spend time talking about everything that matters: faith, work, fears, dreams, your future together." Grandpa studied his glass for a few seconds before adding, "If she hesitates, that's a red flag. If she agrees, even with some nerves, you'll know you have something worth fighting for. Your dad and Martin are right. Jenna could have almost anything or anyone she wants. You need to be sure that her heart matches her beauty. Better to figure that out now, before you're 5 years into a marriage with kids and a whole lot harder choices to make." Their advice hit me hard, but I knew it came from a place of deep care. We spent the rest of the night half watching the avalanche tear apart Vancouver, with Jenna popping up in conversation now and then. After some soul-searching, I decided to take the middle road. I wasn't eager to move back up north, but it was clear Jenna and I needed more one-on-one time away from the crowd. So I made a choice: no proposal for at least 4 months. After all, advice isn't worth much if you ignore it. Only a fool tosses aside wise counsel, and I knew I'd been given some of the best. 2 weeks later, I asked Jenna out to our go-to pub in Golden, a laid-back spot where my buddy Ryan made sure we got a quiet booth tucked away from the noise. As we settled in, Jenna, looking radiant as always and as perceptive as ever, asked, "Are we just chilling tonight, or is there a bigger plan?" I smiled. "Somewhere in between," I said. "This is new territory for me. I've never been in a serious relationship before. But I'm falling hard for you, and I want us to build something real, something lasting." I added, "If you're up for it, there are a few things I want us to talk about." Jenna's face lit up. You're making a lot of sense, Travis. And without even cussing once. I've been thinking about it too. It's scary, falling for someone this deeply. But here we are. She leaned forward slightly. So, what's on your mind? For the next 20 minutes, I laid out my thoughts. I suggested we dedicate the next 4 months to exclusively dating, carving out weekends to spend just the two of us, and committing to 2 nights each week focused purely on important conversations. I even floated the idea of reaching out to older couples we admired for advice, to make sure we aligned on the big things. Jenna teased me over that last bit, throwing a playful punch at my arm. You coming, handsome? She said with a cheeky grin, her vivid green eyes flashing with mischief. I'm all in, I grinned back. And maybe I'll teach you a thing or two myself. Let's start the first lesson right here, she said, finishing her beer with a laugh. Later that night, we made our way back to my apartment on Greta. As I unlocked the door, Jenna leaned close and whispered, Are you sure you should be alone with a hockey player? I might end up getting taken advantage of. With a quick smile, I swung the door open. Not a chance, sweetheart, I said, leading her inside. An hour later, we were fast asleep, tangled up in each other's arms, and my last thought before drifting off was how perfect everything felt. The following months went by mostly without issue, sprinkled only with minor bumps along the way. Around 3 months in, we found ourselves at a lively pub, enjoying some live music. After a few drinks, Jenna took it upon herself to teach me how to dance, and for a while, it was nothing but pure fun. But then I stepped away to use the restroom, When I returned, there she was, talking to a guy I didn't recognize. He was standing too close, and Jenna wasn't doing much to create any distance. Remembering the words of caution I'd been given, I forced myself to stay cool, ordered another round of drinks, and kept an eye on the situation. It didn't take a genius to see what was happening. Jenna was laughing a little too easily, touching his forearm now and then, and giving off all the classic signs of flirtation. She acted as if she hadn't even noticed I was gone. When Jess finally caught sight of me, a brief flash of guilt crossed her face, but she quickly masked it with a smile. Travis, do you remember Wesley from high school? She asked brightly. Wesley gave a quick smirk and extended his hand. Hey, Travis. Good to see you. It had been 10 years since I'd last seen him, and he seemed to have aged well. I shook his hand and returned the greeting. Something immediately struck me. He used my full name instead of any of the old nicknames like Trav or Trav. That told me he hadn't been part of my hockey crew. Jess clearly realized she had crossed a boundary. It was only a question of how she intended to fix it. Her first chance had already slipped away. Wesley, why don't you join us? Are you here with anyone? She asked, still cheerful. I'll take you up on that, Wesley said easily. I'm just here with a few friends, but it's nothing important. I can ditch them for old time's sake. I can't believe you're here solo, Jess added, laughing. There are plenty of women here who should be all over you. She kept the conversation flowing with Wesley, acting like I wasn't even there, not even bothering to thank me for bringing her a beer. Then she said, Why don't you take me for a spin on the dance floor? That was the final straw. Jess didn't so much as glance at me to see how I felt about it. She grabbed Wesley's hand and headed for the dance floor without a second thought. Be back soon, babe. Don't go flirting while I'm gone, Wesley said with a nervous chuckle as they left. Wesley was a little taller than I was, but he had the polished look of a wealthy kid who'd never had to throw a punch. Back in high school in Oregon, I'd gotten into a few scraps myself. Even my first week working in the logging industry was rough. I got my ass handed to me by a roughneck for mouthing off. After that, we made peace, and he took me under his wing. Since then, I'd learned to rein in my temper. Wesley hadn't gone to my school, but from the way he looked at me, it was clear he knew who I was. Mind if I steal Jess for a dance? He asked. Naturally, I didn't mind, at least not officially. Sure, I said, but Jess didn't even let me finish. She cut in smoothly. Of course he doesn't, making it crystal clear I had no say in the matter. There's no such thing as a fourth strike in baseball. And while Wesley at least showed some decency by asking, Jenna was in for a hard reality check when she came back and found me gone. I decided not to stick around to stew. I hopped on Greta and rode home under the cool moonlight. Jess and I weren't living together yet, and I hadn't pushed for it. I always believed a man should propose marriage before asking a woman to move in. Otherwise, it opened the door for disrespect and easy exits. The ride home took about 20 minutes, and before long, Jess started blowing up my phone. "Travis, where are you?" she demanded over the phone. "You're not at home. Why would you leave without me? You were practically drooling over Wesley. Get back here right now, idiot. You're making me look bad." "Good night, Jess." "I trust you'll find your way home," I replied calmly before cutting the call. She tried ringing again, but I ignored it. I needed peace before the inevitable blow-up in the morning. By 7:30 the next morning, I was finishing my second cup of coffee when Jess stormed through the door, her green eyes blazing. Even though we didn't share a home, she had a key to my place. "You coward, Travis," she spat. "How could you abandon me like that? Are you such a child that you run away just because your feelings are hurt? Start explaining if you expect me to stay." Her face was flushed, her nostrils flaring with anger. If I hadn't been a lumberjack used to dealing with rough men, I might have found it intimidating. "Would you like to sit down and have some coffee, Jenna?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "I don't want your damn coffee, you immature idiot," she snapped. I stayed calm, which only seemed to fuel her anger more, but I wasn't about to start shouting back at a furious Irish woman. "All right then. Let's get straight to it," I said. "I love you, Jess," I began. "I want to build a future with you, but I won't accept being disrespected. What you did last night crossed a line. We're not casually dating. We're building something real. You let Wesley get too close, and you didn't even pretend to care about how that made me feel. You invited him to sit with us without asking me first. You complimented him like you were trying to get his attention. Then you asked him to dance without so much as glancing at me. Wesley at least had the decency to ask if it was all right, but you didn't even give me a chance to respond. Tell me, Jess, how does that show love or respect?" I asked her, keeping my tone firm but calm. "I get it. Everyone enjoys attention now and then. That's normal. But you treated me like I didn't matter, like my voice didn't matter. I was wrong to leave without saying anything. I should have spoken up. But I'm not going to stand around and fight for your attention. We're past that. I'm all in. You should expect loyalty and respect from me, and I expect the same in return. If that's not what you want, tell me. It'll hurt like hell, but I'll walk away and honor your choice. But if you love me and want to continue, then show me the same love, respect, and honor that I offer you. Picture it the other way around. Imagine a woman openly flirting with me while you stood there watching. What if I turned away from you and started dancing with her without even a glance in your direction?" Jess said nothing at first, just stared at me with a blank expression. For a moment I thought she might simply leave. Instead, tears brimmed in her eyes and her lip quivered. Suddenly, she collapsed into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. I wrapped my arms around her and held her close, letting her cry until her breathing slowed. "Travis, I am so sorry," she whispered through her tears. "I didn't think at all. What I did was horrible. I can't believe I treated you that way." She clung tighter, voice breaking with emotion. "I love you so much, and I want to stay by your side. Please forgive me," she begged, her crying starting all over again. I kept holding her, then gently drew her back so I could look into her face. The honesty shining through her tears was undeniable. "I forgive you, Jess," I murmured. "I love you too. But we need to establish strong boundaries and keep each other first. I understand men will approach you, but we have to respect our relationship above all else. We can't waver on that." "I get it, Travis," she said in a hushed voice, nodding earnestly. She wiped her cheeks with her shirt sleeve and managed a small smile. I must look awful. Let me clean up, and then maybe we can get some coffee and figure out how to build something stronger between us. 5 months later, we stood together under the clear blue sky outside Breckenridge, exchanging vows on a crisp Saturday morning. The weather was perfect for late May, sunny and pleasantly cool. Although my hockey friends were rowdy in their celebrations, the ceremony itself was peaceful. Surrounded by the people we loved most, we promised to be faithful and walk through life side by side as husband and wife. We celebrated with family and friends until early evening, leaving around 6 p.m. to head to the airport for our honeymoon. Greta gave us a ride for our flight to Cabo. After 9 unforgettable days in paradise, we returned to Denver as summer began to take hold. Over the following months, Jess and I shared countless meaningful conversations, taking long walks to tackle serious topics. We even sought therapy to dig into our pasts, our hopes, and the ways we communicated. I believed I was doing exactly what the 3 men I trusted most in life had advised, starting a lifelong partnership with a woman who loved me as deeply as I loved her. But here I was, just 4.5 years after Jess and I divorced, once again driving down the highway alone. I had truly believed we were doing everything right. We worked through emotional and psychological challenges, discussing difficult issues both before and after our wedding. I thought we had committed ourselves to honesty, care, and respect. Yet, none of that matters if the person beside you doesn't share the same understanding of those values. Jess had her own definitions, ones she never fully revealed. There were long-standing patterns in her behavior that she either couldn't or wouldn't change, and eventually, those patterns tore us apart. Grandpa Rockwell had warned me years ago, outward beauty means little if ugliness festers within. A year before our marriage ended, Jess had been thrilled to learn she would be teaching 9th grade algebra and 10th grade trigonometry at the local high school. 2 senior teachers were nearing retirement, and her department head, Dr. Caleb Whitmore, better known as Caleb the Devil, had hinted that she might soon teach AP courses too. For the first 2 months of the school year, Jess was full of excitement. Every evening she came home eager to share stories about her students and how much she loved teaching. She spoke with admiration about Dr. Whitmore, who had taken her under his wing. At the time, I thought nothing of it. He seemed like a harmless mentor who wanted to see her succeed. Looking back, I should have paid more attention. Dr. Whitmore was 15 years older than Jess and had a wife and 3 teenage kids. When I finally met him in early October, I expected someone remarkable, given how Jess had described him. Instead, he was utterly ordinary, about 5'4", slim for his age, and not a gray hair in sight. He wasn't unlikable, but nothing about him stood out. I had imagined a legendary teacher, but what I found was an average guy. For those unfamiliar with hockey, let me put it this way. Barry Melrose, drafted 36th overall in 1978, had a decent but unremarkable professional career, playing about 300 games. To me, Dr. Whitmore was the Barry Melrose of teaching, nice enough, but far from extraordinary. I never understood why Jess spoke of him with such reverence. I figured she just respected his mentorship. Who was I to criticize? I listened as she raved about her experiences at work and her inspiring boss. But over time, I realized that almost every conversation centered around her school life, and most of that around Whitmore. Whenever I brought up my own job, my hockey interests, or even family matters, Jess would listen briefly, then steer the topic back to herself. As a newlywed, I chalked it up to normal adjustment. I genuinely didn't mind hearing about her work, but I longed for her to take an interest in my life too. Sadly, that seldom happened, and by the time I finally voiced my feelings, it was already too late. Just after Thanksgiving, while planning Christmas festivities over the phone with my mom, she suddenly shifted the conversation. "How are things with you and Jess?" she asked. "They're okay, Mom." "Why?" I replied. "You're sure?" she pressed gently. Yeah, I think so. Why do you ask? There was a pause before she answered. Travis, you know you can always come to me if anything's weighing on you. I hesitated, then let out a sigh. Honestly, Mom, she talks about herself and her work constantly. She barely asks about me, my job, or our family. It feels one-sided. In a healthy relationship, shouldn't both people be enthusiastic about each other's lives? I keep supporting her, but she doesn't seem to give the same back. We continued chatting for a while longer, and I made sure to thank her for being concerned. I didn't exactly confirm whether I agreed with her observations, but it was obvious she had picked up on my growing anxiety. I told her I would give real thought to what she had said. Instead of confronting Jess right away, I started quietly keeping a simple record of our conversations. Numbers have always been second nature to me, so setting up a basic tally was no trouble at all. Pretty soon, the pattern was impossible to ignore. Nearly every conversation seemed to circle back to Jess and her world. A tight, uncomfortable feeling grew in my gut, and that old Bob Seger song popped into my head. Jess had always had this magnetic quality, the kind that made people want to say yes to her. As amazing as she could be, there was a stubborn, self-centered streak in her, especially when something stood between her and what she wanted. Hoping to reconnect, I organized a weekend getaway just for the two of us, aiming to unwind and actually talk. Back in the early years of our marriage, we used to take little trips like that all the time, so I figured it would feel natural. After double-checking our calendars and seeing no conflicts, I booked a cozy cabin outside Aspen. I'd be missing a hockey game, sure, and my buddies would probably give me some flack, but it felt like a worthwhile sacrifice. I was excited to surprise Jess with the news after dinner that night. Her reaction was not what I expected. Jess paused, longer than I would have guessed, before saying, "Travis, you should have asked me first." She went on to explain that Caleb, her department chair, had scheduled a mandatory brainstorming session for next Saturday to discuss curriculum ideas. Her face didn't show guilt. It showed irritation. "Jess, I did check with you," I said, trying to keep my voice even. I pointed out that nothing about a meeting was on our shared calendar. I asked her when exactly this meeting had been scheduled. I couldn't help but notice how easily Dr. Whitmore had become just Caleb now. "Maybe about a week ago," Jess said, clearly uncertain. I thought I updated the calendar. Maybe I forgot. This was a first, especially ironic considering the shared calendar had been her idea in the first place. Anger flared up inside me. "Seriously, Jess? You're already working yourself into the ground, and now Whitmore gets to steal your weekends too? That's not fair, Travis," she fired back. "Caleb is just trying to do what's best for the school and the students. It's one Saturday. We can find another weekend." "You're missing the point," I said, struggling to keep my cool. "You're the one who made a huge deal about using that calendar. Remember when I forgot to log that client dinner? You lost it and made me rearrange everything. What's fair for me should be fair for you." "You're blowing this way out of proportion," Jess snapped. "We'll just reschedule. It's not a big deal." "Of course, Jess. You're absolutely right," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Sorry for trying to plan something nice. Sorry for thinking we were both supposed to follow the same rules. Sorry for stepping on Caleb's precious plans." She opened her mouth to respond, but I was already grabbing my jacket. I jumped on Greta, my old motorcycle, and took off, not really caring where I was headed. A 1-hour ride turned into 3 after I stopped for a few beers at the local pub. When I finally rolled back home, the air between us was frozen solid. We barely crossed paths and didn't exchange a word. I holed up in my home office until exhaustion got the better of me, then crashed on the couch. I've always been an early riser, a leftover habit from my logging days when mornings started before sunrise, so I left the house around 5:30. Jess usually woke up closer to 6:15, meaning we naturally avoided each other. I canceled the cabin booking that morning, losing the $100 deposit. It wasn't about the money, it was about what it represented. Later, I noticed Jess had finally updated the calendar. The faculty meeting was now listed, along with a math conference coming up in January and a few girls' nights out. Feeling petty, I shot her a text. Heading to the rink after work. Games at 7, beers after, home by 11. Check the calendar if you're lost. It's been posted for 2 months. No response. The next several days were miserable, neither of us willing to be the first to break the silence. I was bitter that she didn't seem to care enough to fix what had happened, or even show a hint of regret. I guessed she figured I'd crack first and apologize. Truthfully, we were both disappointed in each other. Then, on Saturday morning, Jess unexpectedly kissed me during breakfast. "Travis, can we please try to work this out today?" she asked sweetly, giving me a playful wink, but never actually saying sorry or admitting fault. Once again, those Seeger lyrics echoed in my head, a face that lets her have her way. I grumbled to myself for a good half hour, then decided I wasn't going to let the whole day go to waste. The porch door had been squeaking for weeks, so I figured I'd finally fix it. But when I took it down, I realized we were out of oil. Annoyed, I grabbed my keys and drove to the hardware store. Mick's Hardware had been a town fixture since just after World War II, still family-run after all these decades. Mick IV ran it now with help from his sons, Mick V and Eli. I used to play hockey with Eli, and Mick V worked weekends there when he wasn't teaching math at Jess's school. So you can imagine my surprise when I walked in and spotted Mick V helping a customer with a snowblower. He caught my eye and waved, then made his way over to me a few minutes later in aisle 9. "Hey, Jaxie, heard you notched a goal and 2 assists Thursday night. Eli says you're still tearing it up. Not too shabby for an old-timer," he joked. "Hey, V? Thanks." "Yeah, it was a good night," I said, chuckling. After a brief pause, I added, "Sorry if I looked weird when I first saw you. I just thought you had that middle school math meeting today. Figured maybe you quit or something." Mick V's expression shifted to sheepish. "I'm still teaching," he said, "but there's no meeting today. Whitmore might be full of himself sometimes, no doubt, but he's not stupid enough to schedule one this weekend." "Did Jess tell you about the meeting we were supposed to have?" I kept my face unreadable, not wanting to show what I was thinking. Maybe I had gotten it wrong when she left earlier. Then a new thought struck me. "Hey V," I said, turning toward him. "Does the math department usually attend conferences?" "Yeah," he replied. "There's one coming up in Estes Park this March. I'm going, and after that, I'll hit the slopes for some skiing." Keeping my voice level, I gave him a teasing smile. "Typical V," I said, feigning a light tone. "Didn't figure you'd actually stay for much of it." He chuckled. "Guess I'm getting old," he said with a grin. "See you around, Trav." He walked off, leaving a knot of worry growing in my stomach. I paid for the oil, climbed into my Jeep, and drove away, unease gnawing at me. Why would Jess say something that wasn't true? I cruised past the school twice, checking each of the 4 parking lots carefully. Every spot was empty. No cars, no lights. My mind raced, refusing to settle. I couldn't just sit around and wait for answers. I needed to do something. Pulling into a nearby coffee shop, I grabbed a cup and settled into a quiet corner, paper and pen in hand. After an hour of scribbling notes and thoughts, an idea began to take shape. I picked up my phone and dialed Paul Conrad to the guys on my hockey team, who also happened to be my insurance agent. He sounded surprised when he answered. "Trav, everything okay? Bust yourself trying to master a new move?" "Not today," I said. "Listen, Conrad, you free to meet?" "I need a few minutes." "Your office?" Something in my voice must have tipped him off, because 15 minutes later, we were sitting across from each other in his conference room. "If you think someone's committing insurance fraud," I began, "would hiring a private investigator be the next step?" "Absolutely," he said, leaning in, his curiosity obvious. "But why do you need to know?" I hesitated. "This stays between us, right?" He looked a little offended. "Of course it does." Sorry, I muttered, running a hand through my hair. My head was a wreck. I think Jess might be cheating, I admitted. I need the truth. Conrad's face fell. Man, I really hope you're wrong. I don't know any PIs personally, but I can refer you to the best. She's discreet, smart, and always delivers. Thanks, Conrad, I said, grateful. He gave me her name, Erin Callahan. Fortunately, since private investigators often keep flexible schedules, she agreed to meet me later that day. Back home, I busied myself fixing the porch door, grabbed a quick shower, ate, and prepared to leave. Before heading out, I texted Jess, saying I had errands and would be back around 3. Erin wasn't tall, barely 5 feet, but the minute you met her, you could tell she was tough. She shook my hand politely, but got straight to business. I explained everything I suspected. If you want thorough results, you're looking at a few weeks, maybe longer, she warned. Since you suspect she's lying about this conference, it won't be cheap. I'll need $1,500 up front. I'll bill you for the rest later. I wired the money while she took more details from me. We finished up, shook hands, and I left. I felt sick to my stomach. But if I was going to uncover the truth, I had to keep playing the part. Jess was back when I arrived home, humming softly in the kitchen. I kissed her cheek and told her I needed another shower. That night, I had tickets to the Avalanche versus Predators game. Jess almost never wanted to go, and tonight was no exception. I told her Martin would be coming with me, which seemed to please her. Then, for the first time, I deliberately lied to her. Jess, I said, putting on my most sincere voice, I'm sorry about how I acted this weekend. I really wanted us to take a trip together, but I shouldn't have snapped at you. I hope you'll forgive me. She smiled warmly. Of course, Travis. I know you're just frustrated. We'll get away soon, just the two of us. Still playing the part, I thought bitterly. The next 6 weeks were pure torture. At work, at home, even around family, I kept up the act, smiling, laughing, pretending everything was normal. Christmas was brutal. Jess and I exchanged gifts, had lunch with my parents-in-law, dinner with hers. New Year's was worse. We had dinner out, went dancing, and spent the night in a hotel room. Even our intimacy felt hollow and fake. The following Sunday, we had dinner at my parents' place with Grandma and Grandpa Rockwell. As we said our goodbyes, Grandpa pulled me aside. I'm sorry, Travis, he said quietly. I frowned. What for, Grandpa? He gave me a sad smile. For being right, he said softly. Right about what? I asked, heart tightening. He looked at me, the sadness deep in his eyes. About the ugliness, he said. But remember, whatever happens, we're here for you. I felt like crumbling right there, but he caught the look in my eyes and spoke firmly. You'll get through this, Travis. There'll be time to cry later. Right now, you do what you have to do. We Rockwells stick together. His words held me up when everything else inside me wanted to fall apart. 3 weeks later, I sat in Erin's office. She had called the day before. Her investigation was complete. I chose to meet her at her office rather than risk Jess seeing anything suspicious. Erin didn't sugarcoat it. I hate to tell you this, Travis, she said, but your wife's been lying and cheating. Take a second if you need to. I took a deep breath. No, I said quietly. Tell me everything. Caleb typically meets your wife at the Hampton Inn out in Englewood. They chose that location because it's well away from any of your company sites. At the office, they're careful to act strictly professional, never giving anyone a reason to look twice. They each drive separately, linking up at a nearby truck stop or rest area, distant enough to avoid raising suspicion, but close enough that either could return quickly if needed. There was never any conference in Colorado Springs. That weekend, they spent time together at an isolated cabin near Gunnison. Their secret meetups happen about every 8 or 9 days, and by now, they've met at least 6 times since I came onto the scene. I've collected audio and video from their last 2 meetings at the Hampton Inn, along with photographs and screenshots of their conversations. The evidence is airtight. She slid a thick folder across the table toward me. Everything you'll need is in here, she said, but I advise you not to rush into reviewing the photos and videos. Oddly, I stayed calm throughout our discussion. I asked a few pointed questions, and she answered each one with precision. When we wrapped up, I asked her to send the final invoice to my secure work email. I gathered the documents and rose to leave. "Mr. Rockwell," she said, stopping me mid-step, "this is the hardest part of my work, but also the most meaningful. I'm very careful about my clients. I don't help liars or frauds. You're one of the good ones. You didn't deserve this." She continued, "It's painful to deliver this news, but now you have the truth. You're not in the dark anymore. You can take back control of your life." I could barely get out a quiet thank you. As I turned away, she added, "One more thing. I did a little digging on Caleb. Turns out this isn't his first time messing around. If you ever want to go public with this, I'll help. No extra fee. If it were the 1880s, someone like him would already be swinging from a tree." When I stepped outside, a thick gray snowfall had started, softening everything under a heavy silence. I sat behind the wheel of my Jeep, frozen, trying to figure out what to do next. After a few minutes, I called Jess. She answered on the third ring. "Hey babe," she said brightly. "Had to make a quick work trip to Boulder this afternoon. The snow's really picking up, and I've still got a few things to finish, so I'm going to stay overnight and head back tomorrow." I lied smoothly. "Oh no," she said, sounding genuinely disappointed. "I was planning to surprise you and come see your hockey game tonight. Be safe driving tomorrow, okay? Love you." "Thanks," I said, unable to add anything else. For a moment, I considered driving to my parents' house, but instead, almost on autopilot, I steered toward the Hampton Inn in Englewood. I parked well out of sight behind a line of bushes, positioned where I had a clear view of the entrance. I promised myself I'd only stay for an hour. While waiting, I called Conrad and broke the news. "Jaxie, man." "I'm so damn sorry," he said, his voice full of pain. "Thanks, Conrad," I replied. "Cover for me with the guys tonight, all right? Tell them the next keg's on me. I'll check in on you tomorrow," he said, "and I'll score a few goals for you tonight." "You better," I said, managing a small smile. I didn't have to wonder whether she would show up. About 35 minutes later, Caleb's car rolled into the lot, and he headed inside. Not long after, Jess pulled up, parking at the far edge of the lot. She slipped through a side door where Caleb met her with a quick, practiced kiss. I doubled over, vomiting into the bushes. After that, I drove straight to my parents' house. On the way, I called my dad and gave him the barest sketch of what had happened. He stayed silent, which, for him, was a dangerous sign. I asked him to explain everything to Mom because I didn't think I could relive it again. I told him I'd be there in 20 minutes and hung up, the tears already blurring the road. When I finally pulled into the driveway, I saw Martin's, Uncle Mike's, and Grandpa's cars all lined up outside. Mom was already waiting at the door. When I stumbled up the front steps, I collapsed into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. When I came back to myself, all 6 of us were gathered in the living room. Mom offered to make food, and Dad poured me a stiff drink, but I waved them off, not trusting my stomach to handle anything. Over the next half hour, I laid it all out for them. I hadn't even touched the folder yet, but based on what Aaron had told me, it was more than enough. They all listened quietly, giving me the space I needed to get it out. I cried through almost the whole telling, and Mom gently rubbed my back, just like when I was a kid. By the time I finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Grandpa was the first to find his voice. "Our hearts are shattered for you, son," he said. "We're all itching to give Jess and that scumbag boss of hers a piece of our minds. But we need to be smart. Going after them right now would only make things worse. Let's talk more tonight, get some rest, and come up with a plan tomorrow. Just remember, you're not in this alone." Everyone turned to Grandpa. Somehow it seemed he had suspected the truth longer than anyone else, but no one resented him for it. He was the steady center of our family. "You're right, Dad," my father finally said. Then he added, "What about Travis not heading home tomorrow? Will Jess expect him to check in or make an appearance?" Uncle Mike stepped in immediately. "I'll handle that. Travis already told her he's tied up in Boulder. With this snowstorm, it's the perfect cover to buy us more time. I decided that first thing tomorrow morning, I'd call Jess and stress that the situation was urgent, and that only Travis was equipped to deal with it. He'd need to speak with her soon, though I could cushion it by suggesting it might take a day or two more. Given her school responsibilities, there was little chance she'd try to rush over to Boulder. We finalized the plan, with some additional input from Mom and Dad. My brother pulled me into a tight embrace, and both of us openly wept. Uncle Mike wrapped me in a hug too, and Grandpa placed his weathered hands on either side of my face. "You'll get through this, Travis," he assured me with quiet strength. After everyone left, I slipped away to the guest room, took a couple of sleeping pills, and quickly sank into a deep, heavy sleep. By morning, I awoke feeling strangely clear-headed and steady, though the sadness still weighed heavily inside me. Jess had made her choices. She'd broken her promises and walked away from what we had. Now, it was my turn to make some choices of my own. My family's unwavering support would carry me forward, and I could already see a longer path forming. At 8:30 sharp, we gathered around the kitchen table again, exchanging ideas. By noon, we had a strong foundation in place. Next on my list was a meeting with a lawyer Uncle Mike swore by, someone seasoned in exactly these kinds of battles. Right at 1:30 p.m., I stepped through the doors of Blake, & Blake. I sat down with Melanie Blake Chandler, a composed woman in her late 40s with sharp blue eyes and a firm handshake. Her entire practice centered on family law, and she refused to represent cheaters. She knew Colorado's divorce laws like the back of her hand. "What are you hoping for once everything's finalized, Mr. Rockwell?" she asked me. "I'm still working that out," I said honestly. "Ideally, I don't want her walking away with anything more than she brought in, though I know that may not be realistic. Luckily, our prenup protects the family business if there's infidelity. More than anything, I want my reputation intact, and the record to show she was the one who broke us. I wouldn't mind seeing him named too, maybe even getting him fired. But mainly, I just want to move on." "That's a healthy attitude," she said with a nod. "I'm glad you're being practical. As your attorney, I need to ask, are you considering any form of retaliation?" "No, ma'am," I replied sincerely. "But I can't exactly control what my old hockey teammates might decide to do." Her lips curled into a mischievous grin, catching me off guard. "Two of my brothers played hockey at the University of Denver," she said, giving me a wink. "I know how that world works." "Well then, Mrs. Blake Chandler, I think I've found my lawyer," I said with a laugh. "Call me Beecher if you like," she offered smoothly. "Deal. I'm Trav." Before leaving, we locked in 3 main steps. First, I would leave the private investigator's file with her for a full analysis. Second, she would officially file for divorce within 24 hours. Third, Jess would be served right after school on Friday, in the parking lot, to catch her off guard. Ideally, her reaction would work to our advantage. That same Friday night, I would confront her at home and insist she move out. The house was in my name alone. Meanwhile, the PI would keep trailing her movements before and after the paperwork was delivered. The expenses were already piling up. The bill had climbed near $5,000, and the number made my stomach churn. Beecher emphasized the importance of staying calm, leaning on my family, and keeping life as normal as possible. We swapped cell numbers in case anything urgent came up. As I gathered my things, I asked, "Why isn't the firm called Blake, Chandler & Blake?" She laughed. "Patience, Trav. My father retires in 3 years. After that, the name will change." On my way out, I sent Jess a text. Finished dealing with the stuff. Heading home. Should be there by 6. She responded almost instantly, adding a heart emoji. Can't wait to see you. I deleted her message without thinking twice. Then I drove straight to my parents' place to fill them in. Martin was there with Mom and Dad, and I made sure to call Grandpa too, updating him on everything. You sound stronger already, Travis, Grandpa said with warmth. I'm proud of how you're handling all this. By 5:30 p.m., I headed home. Jess, upstairs, came down the moment she heard the front door open. We shared a brief hug and kiss. I took a quick shower, changed into fresh clothes, and together we threw together a simple meal: burgers and salad. It hit me that I hadn't eaten in more than 24 hours, and now I felt starving. As we cleared the table, Jess started flirting. She wore an oversized shirt with nothing underneath and a pair of snug leggings. She draped her leg over mine. Physically, my body responded instantly, but inside I recoiled. The idea of being intimate with her made my stomach turn, though technically, she was still my wife. You might have been Trav last night, she teased, but I'm hoping Trav's taking his wife upstairs tonight. Sorry, babe, I said, pretending to sound regretful. My head's been killing me for 2 days, and driving in the snow didn't help. She blinked, surprised. I could count the times I'd ever turned her down on one hand and still have fingers left over. I get it, she said quietly, disappointment flickering across her face. I fought the urge to lash out, to say something vicious, like suggesting she check into the Hampton Inn with Caleb. But I swallowed the words. Instead, I said softly, how about I run you a hot bath and give you a back rub? I carefully moved her foot off my lap and stood up, still managing a smile. She soaked in the bath while I set up the bedroom. When she returned, I gave her a long, gentle massage, the anger simmering inside me the entire time. Within 20 minutes, she drifted off to sleep. I pulled the blankets over her and made sure to keep as much space between us in bed as possible. The next evening, I had a hockey game scheduled. Jess didn't ask me to skip it, maybe because I'd already missed Monday's match. Thursday night turned out to be tougher emotionally, but dinner with her parents provided a welcome distraction. On the drive back home, it became clear Jess had something else on her mind. When she wasn't looking, I discreetly texted Uncle Mike. Just a few minutes after we returned home, Mike gave us a call. Travis, sorry to intrude, he began. Is Jess with you? Yes, Uncle Mike, I said. We just got back from dinner at the Remingtons' place. Hey there, Jess, he added quickly. Hi, Uncle Mike, Jess responded warmly. We're a little busy here. Could Travis call you back in the morning? Jess asked, throwing me a teasing wink. I really hate to interrupt, Mike apologized. But this can't wait. Travis, Jonas's investment file isn't complete. Tina had to leave sick, and we need the final version for the 7:30 meeting tomorrow. I gave a mock groan. All right, Uncle Mike. I'll take Jess home and be at the office within 30 minutes. Thanks, Travis. Sorry again, Jess, Mike said. You owe us a steak dinner at Capitol Grill, Jess joked. Deal, Mike chuckled. Jess pulled a dramatic pout as I ended the call. This is getting ridiculous, she complained. What's a girl got to do to get her husband in bed? I bit my tongue to avoid the first sarcastic answer that popped into my head. I know, babe, I said instead. I promise you'll get a break soon. She didn't seem to notice I'd said you instead of we. Jess sulked through the whole drive, quietly humming an annoyed tune. When we pulled up to the house, she stepped out without looking back. I rolled down the window and called, I'll be gone for another 3 hours. Maybe you'll wait up for me. Without turning around, she waved dismissively and disappeared inside. Yeah, thanks for the encouragement. Friday turned out to be the least productive day of my career. Before leaving at dawn, I left a note for Jess, promising the evening would be just for us. I spent the early morning sorting through paperwork and making a few client calls, thinking I'd work until noon. But when I glanced at the clock, it was barely 9:30. Frustrated, I told Donna, my assistant, I was heading to the gym. I worked out harder than usual, just trying to burn some time. After a lunch meeting with Dad and Uncle Mike, I dragged myself back to the office and pretended to work for another 2 hours before finally heading home, beating Jess back by about an hour. Meanwhile, Jess was wrapping up her last class of the day when Caleb swaggered into her classroom, a greasy smile plastered on his face. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, his tone suggestive. "How about a little detour this afternoon?" Caleb had the looks and the charm, but Jess was getting tired of him. Sure, he was good in bed, but he had nothing going for him otherwise. 15 years older, married with 3 kids, stuck in a dead-end job. Jess knew it was time to end it gracefully, especially since he was technically still her boss. "Sorry, Caleb," she said smoothly. "Travis and I haven't had much time together lately. Maybe we can meet late Sunday instead? Travis has a hockey game at 5, so I could sneak out between 4 and 6. "I'll end it then," she thought. "End things nicely." Caleb didn't seem thrilled, but he agreed with a nod. Maybe he could get his mother-in-law to babysit, he figured. His wife wasn't Jess, but she was good enough. "Fine," he said. "I'll pick you up at the bus stop at 4 sharp." Jess watched him leave, whistling as he went, and she sighed in relief. She was ready to be done with Caleb Whitmore. Recently, he had been acting like she owed him something, and Jess didn't let any man, not even Travis, have that kind of power over her. After half an hour grading math tests, Jess leaned back and thought about Travis. He was strong when it mattered, but he also spoiled her, just as she believed she deserved. He was successful, driven, and would be a fantastic father, just like his father and grandfather had been. Jess realized that she truly loved him. She wanted to deepen that love. But deep inside, she knew she could never promise absolute fidelity. Still, she resolved to renew her commitment to their marriage. Her mind struggled to tie together loyalty, truthfulness, and love in the way it should. Jess didn't feel as guilty as she probably should have. She didn't see her own selfishness, her vanity, but it wouldn't be long before she did. As Jess crossed the parking lot, a woman approached her carrying a large manila envelope. "Excuse me," the woman said politely. "Are you Mrs. Jenna Rockwell? Beecher's firm always sent female process servers for sensitive cases like this. Women drew less attention." "Yes, that's me," Jess replied, a bit confused. "I'm sorry to bother you. I just need to verify your ID," the woman said. Blushing, Jess pulled her faculty ID from its lanyard and held it up. "Thank you, Mrs. Rockwell," the woman said, handing over the envelope. "You've been served." Without another word, she turned and walked away. Jess stood frozen for a moment. "Wait. What? I don't understand," she called after the woman, but there was no response. Her hands trembled as she tore open the envelope. The bold title at the top of the first page struck her like a blow. Statement of Dissolution of Marriage. No, no, no. "This can't be happening," Jess whispered, feeling the world collapse around her. "Travis would never betray me like this. He adores me. He's devoted to me. There's no chance he could have discovered anything about Caleb. We've been meticulous. There's simply no way he knows. If he did, he would have already confronted me. God, no. I have to get home and fix this before it unravels." Fumbling her keys, she dropped the pile of papers she was holding and broke into sobs. Snatching up the scattered documents with trembling hands, she wrenched open her car door and slid behind the wheel, shaking violently as her emotions overwhelmed her. Her entire world, so carefully maintained until now, was tilting. It took several agonizing minutes for her to gather enough control to drive. The entire ride home, she swung wildly between fury, despair, and uncontrollable weeping. Once she reached home, she would face Travis, ready to say whatever needed to be said. No one, least of all Travis Rockwell, had ever humiliated her like this before. The audacity of him storming into her workplace and causing a scene. Thankfully, most staff had already left, but a few stragglers remained, and undoubtedly some had witnessed everything. She knew by Monday morning the gossip would be rampant. At no point did she stop to consider her own responsibility in all of this. The painful truth was that her own deceit had set the entire disaster in motion. By the time she turned into the driveway, she forced herself to steady her nerves. She was convinced she could still spin this, could still salvage what remained. Her strategy was simple: blame Caleb, accuse him of coercion, and insist she had been a victim. She vowed never to betray Travis again, but she dared not tell the full truth. She was terrified of his temper and what vengeance he might unleash on Caleb if provoked. Pushing through the front door with determination, she clung desperately to her rehearsed story. As she entered, I was already sitting calmly at the kitchen table, a folder spread open in front of me. Jess ignored it entirely, launching straight into her script. "Travis, sweetheart, this is a huge misunderstanding," she wailed. "You can't be serious about divorcing me. We belong together. You're my one true love." "Why would you even think about ending us?" she pleaded desperately. I remained composed. "Jess, sit down," I said evenly. She lowered herself onto the chair, perching anxiously on its edge. "Jess," I began carefully, "I've discovered some very disturbing things. I'm giving you a single chance to tell me the truth. I won't interrupt you. Just be honest. If you are completely truthful, I'll reconsider everything." She opened her mouth to respond, but I lifted a hand to halt her. "But before you start," I added, "you should know I'm recording this conversation on my phone. I want everything documented. This is your only chance. If you lie, even once, it's over. I'll file for divorce immediately. The choice is yours." Still refusing to glance at the folder lying before her, Jess began, voice shaking. "Travis, I'll say everything you want. I can even write it down. But listen. Caleb Whitmore forced himself on me. He abused his position to manipulate me. I fought him off over and over, but he made it very clear my job was at risk if I didn't give in. I hated it, Travis, every moment of it, but I didn't know how to make it stop." Tears spilled over as she pressed forward. "I was too scared to tell you. I thought I could handle it alone, and I was terrified you'd attack him and get yourself into trouble, or worse. Eventually, he left me no choice, and I surrendered. But it was only one time, Travis. Just once. And I hated myself for it." Today, she continued between sobs, he tried again after school. He cornered me, tried to force himself on me before I came home. But I refused. "Oh, Travis," she wept. "Now that you know, you can help me stop him. I'm sure I'm not the only one he's targeted. I've heard stories about other teachers too." With that, Jess collapsed onto the table, burying her face in her arms and dissolving into heavy, racking sobs. I leaned back in my chair and offered her a slow, mocking round of applause. As heartbreaking as it was to hear her weave such brazen lies, I had to admit, grudgingly, her performance was impressive. Maybe after this, she could even try her hand at acting professionally. "Jess," I said, voice cold as steel, "I'm honestly impressed. That was quite the show." "What? Travis, how could you be so cruel after everything I've just confessed?" she whimpered, hurt flashing in her tear-filled eyes. "Jess," I said quietly, "you've always had a talent for manipulating men. I was just another fool who fell for it. You're breathtaking on the outside, and for a long time I convinced myself your soul was just as beautiful. Let me tell you what I actually know." I flipped the folder open and spread the documents across the table for her to see. "You've been having an affair with Caleb for at least 2 months, I said flatly. "You meet him at the Hampton Inn in Inglewood." I slid a series of photographs across the table toward her. Jess turned pale. "You met at least 6 times that I know of," I continued. "There was no math seminar in December, no educational conference in Colorado Springs. I have recordings too, crystal clear, where you and Caleb whisper sweet nothings to each other. Talk about how amazing your time together is." I gave her a long, hard stare, letting the weight of the evidence crush her. "So, my faithful wife, You don't sound coerced at all. You sound delighted. 8 recorded meetings, including a full weekend together in Gunnison. I shook my head slowly, disappointment seeping through my every word. This evidence shows one thing. You're a liar, a cheat, and you thought I'd never figure it out. For the first time since I had met her, Jess was truly speechless. No pleading, no tears, no tricks could save her now. She broke down completely. You destroyed me, Jess, I said, my voice cracking with emotion. I can't even count the nights I spent sobbing alone, trying to understand how you could do this to me. The damage to my relationships, both at work and within my family, has been enormous. My confidence has been completely shattered, and I've been left constantly asking myself, why? Why would you throw away everything we built together, our love, our marriage, for a meaningless fling with a school teacher? I've seen Caleb in pictures. He's no taller than me, no stronger either. And even though it sickened me to overhear you two, it was obvious. He wasn't any better in bed, because there was never any real love involved. That's when the anger started rising inside me. You know what, Jess? I finally see it clearly. You're not worth another ounce of pain. You crushed my heart, and now I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust another woman again. But I'm not letting this destroy who I am. Deep inside, you're nothing but a selfish, hollow person. I can walk away knowing I gave you the best parts of me. Sure, I wasn't perfect, but no one deserves the betrayal you handed me. I feel nothing anymore. People say hatred is the opposite of love, but I believe it's something colder. Indifference. And that's how I'll treat you from now on, as if you don't exist. It won't be an instant recovery, but today marks the first step. From here on out, you're just a ghost in my past. Travis, please don't do this, Jess pleaded. I didn't waver. I've already packed a bag for you. Grab whatever else you need from upstairs. But you're leaving today. There's a folder on the counter with my attorney's contact information. When you need to pick up anything else, talk to her. I won't be here when you come back. Take everything that was yours before the marriage. If you leave anything behind, I'll either trash it or set it on fire. Jess's voice cracked. Travis, please. I'm begging you. I was afraid to tell you the truth. I made a huge mistake. But I believe we can still fix us. I want to fix this. I still want you. Afraid, Jess? Really? When have I ever given you any reason to fear me? My voice stayed steady. I've never yelled at you, never so much as touched you in anger. If you felt fear, it's because, deep down, you knew you were playing a game you couldn't win. I won't just let you throw me out like some discarded woman, she said, her stubbornness rising, her Irish blood boiling. This is my home, too. I stayed calm. Jess, this house was mine long before we even met. It's in my name only. We never had children, so there's no legal loophole for you to hide behind. You signed the prenup. Remember? Infidelity means you get nothing. You were too busy charming everyone to bother reading the fine print. You don't get to cheat and then stake a claim on my home. I don't want anything from you, Jess cried. I just want you. Caleb doesn't mean anything to me. I was planning to end it with him on Sunday, she blurted out, and instantly she realized the mistake. Sunday, the day I had a hockey game. Even if I believed her, and I didn't, it was far too late. I swear, Travis, I don't care about him. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I can't excuse what I did, but can't we move past this? We're supposed to be together. You're right about one thing, Jess. It was meaningless. It was also cruel, selfish, and cold-hearted, I said, my voice icy. Don't confuse what's happening here. You gave up on this marriage. You destroyed it when you chose to lie and sneak off behind my back. If you can't even see that much, I pity you. All I'm doing is pulling the plug on something you already killed. Jess broke down sobbing, realizing too late the depth of the damage she'd done. I sat silently, giving her space to collect herself. What am I supposed to do now? She asked through her tears. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my concern anymore, I said simply. My family knows what happened. They've been my support through this whole nightmare. I haven't spoken to yours yet, but if you dare lie to them about it, I will make sure they hear the truth. I'm not coming after Caleb Whitmore either, but on Monday, your boss will know everything. I'm not suing the school, but I won't protect you or him. If Caleb's wife wants answers, I'll give them. He's got 3 kids, Jess. Think about what you've done to them too. I'm done shielding you. The locks have already been changed. I haven't touched your bank account. The divorce agreement is fair. Talk to your lawyer. Sign it. Now gather your things. Leave. Jess knew she'd lost. Wiping her face, she climbed the stairs, packed a few more bags, and quietly slipped out through the kitchen door. I sat there in the heavy silence, exhausted, but relieved that it was finally finished. "I'm sorry, Travis," she whispered before leaving. "Yes, Jess," I said without emotion. "You are." 8 months later, the divorce papers were finalized, and I was preparing to move to Santa Fe. Why leave? I needed distance. Plain and simple. I love my family, and they love me. But I needed breathing room. Just like the time I ran off to Oregon 15 years ago, this was my reset. I'd spend a year or 2 building my new business, then eventually hand it off to someone else and move back to Denver. My hockey team would miss me, but I was ready for a fresh start. For now, the only woman in my life would be Greta, my old, reliable dog. As for Jess, I heard through the grapevine that a few of the hockey wives took her on a girls' weekend to cheer her up after the news broke. Thanks to her ex-friend Trisha, though, it wasn't quite the vacation Jess had in mind. Caleb didn't fare much better. Dr. Fairbanks, the principal, made sure his professional life collapsed spectacularly. His contract wasn't renewed, and he was forced to leave the state. His marriage ended, and his kids cut all ties with him. And just before he fled town, he had a little mishap, tumbling down the stairs at his apartment complex, ended up with 3 broken ribs, missing teeth, and a busted arm. According to about 20 regulars who were drinking at O'Connell's that night, it really was an accident. Maybe Bob Seger had it wrong after all. The first story is over, but the next one is on its way. Stay tuned. Let's jump right in. Once our finances allowed us to upgrade to a nicer neighborhood, Janice and I, Neville, that's me, were immediately charmed by Blueberry Way, a peaceful cul-de-sac with just 15 houses. The numbering followed an old English tradition, odd numbers to the left, even numbers to the right. Our future home, number 9, was the last on the left-hand side. Behind the house, the garden sloped gently down to a river, separated by a simple fence and barely any real riverbank. The neighborhood wasn't particularly geared toward families with children, which worked perfectly for us since we weren't planning to have any. Across the street, number 10 was also for sale, priced a bit lower. Its backyard, however, was smaller, and I was determined to have number 9. 9 had always been a lucky number for me. The house needed a bit of work, though thankfully the biggest job, rewiring, had already been handled. I had just landed 2 fresh contracts, and the commissions were safely resting in our bank account. Because I worked mostly from home, apart from the occasional midweek business trip, I had ample time to take on the renovations. Over the winter, we gradually upgraded everything, including fitting underfloor heating. I tackled most of the DIY myself, although plumbing wasn't my forte. Janice, on the other hand, had a real talent for painting. She transformed one of the living room walls with a mural so captivating that we often joked it was better than anything on television. One cold December morning, Janice was running late for work. I grabbed her Renault's keys, filled a kettle with warm, but not boiling, water, and went outside. I poured the water over the windshield and windows, started the car, cranked the heater, and wiped the glass clear with a squeegee. It gave me a little chuckle to realize her office was exactly 9 miles away, and the car's odometer that morning read 9,018 miles. It didn't signify anything important, but I found it amusing. Since Janice also drove the car for shopping and errands, the mileage didn't often land so neatly on a multiple of 9. By the end of the day, I figured the reading would roll over to 936, and naturally, I knew I would check. That's just the sort of detail-oriented person I am. Thanks for defrosting the car, sweetheart. What's today's house project? Janice asked, grabbing her bag on her way out. I'm finally going to tackle the cupboard under the stairs. Been putting it off for ages. Probably just give it a coat of white paint, I answered. Well, good luck. If you've got time, maybe pick up a Christmas tree too? We can decorate it this weekend, she called over her shoulder as she rushed out. After she left, I made another coffee and opened the cupboard door. It was a typical under-stair storage space, sloping down along the staircase. The far end was neatly boxed off under the third step, leaving a tiny, unusable wedge of space beyond. Since we had finished unpacking weeks ago, I had no real plan for it. We already had a coat closet near the entryway. Maybe it could hold an artificial Christmas tree, I mused, though Janice wanted a real one this year, and if all went well, we might even plant it in the garden afterward. As I inspected the cupboard more closely, a few oddities caught my attention. A hook was mounted just inside the doorway. Since we had restored the fireplace more for atmosphere than for heat, we had some fire irons by the hearth. The hook resembled the poker, except the end was bent like a shepherd's crook. Not knowing its purpose, I left it in place. You never know when something odd might prove useful. Another strange detail was the floor. Smooth pine planks, contrasting with the granite tiles covering the hallway. Partially covering the pine boards was an old, worn welcome mat, likely repurposed after its time at the front door. But why would anyone put a welcome mat inside a closet? It didn't make sense. Then I spotted a small, round metal stud near the top of the sloped panel, about the size of a 50-pence coin. Curiosity got the better of me. I pulled the hook from its mount and stood up, accidentally knocking over my coffee cup in the process. I jumped back instinctively, letting go of the hook. Blast, I muttered. I rushed to the kitchen for a cloth, but when I returned, the coffee spill was barely visible. Only my overturned Homer Simpson mug remained. I wiped the small wet patch away, but strangely, the hook was missing. I hadn't even heard it land. Looking upward, I noticed something peculiar. Lifting the old mat, I uncovered a tiny hole in the floorboards, and nearby, a second metal stud. The hook now hung magnetically from the upper stud. It was magnetic. The floorboards weren't secured permanently. I used the hook to pull at the hole, and sure enough, the entire floor panel lifted up. The magnetic studs clicked together to hold it open. Underneath was a narrow staircase made of concrete. Some coffee had dripped onto the top steps, so I wiped it away before heading back to the kitchen to fetch a flashlight. At the bottom of the stairs was a battered old door, locked but with a rusty key conveniently hanging on a nail beside it. My heart pounded with excitement as I turned the key and stepped inside. It was, unmistakably, a basement, clean, dry, and blissfully free of any signs of vermin. It extended under the entire kitchen dining area, covering about a third of the house's ground floor. When I told Janice about the hidden basement, she was thrilled, not just because of the extra space, but also because it would likely boost the value of number 9. Most likely, the previous owner had never discovered the trapdoor hidden beneath the welcome mat, and it certainly hadn't come up during the property viewings. While we were still deciding how best to use the new space, I went ahead and got a quote for adding underfloor heating and installing lighting. Later that evening, during a brief stop at the pub, I slyly checked the mileage on her Renault, 9036 miles, just as I had expected. I often wonder why I can't resist doing things like that. The next morning, a specialist came by to assess the basement. He confirmed it was dry, showed no signs of rot or moisture, and was notably chilly. But regrettably, there was no mobile reception down there. Digging into the original blueprints from the 1960s, I learned that every house on Blueberry Way had been intended to include a basement. However, scribbled notes in the margins explained that, due to cost overruns, basements were mostly scrapped. Our house, being the first built on a corner lot, was the rare exception. I asked the technician whether our current boiler could manage the extra load. "Shouldn't be a problem," he replied confidently. He explained that the heating setup was already divided into zones. A separate thermostat and timer could easily be installed for the basement. As long as we were disciplined about it, heating only the rooms we were using, it would be fine. He recommended setting the upstairs heating to turn off around 7 a.m. and keeping unused doors closed. He cautioned that the only real issue would arise if we tried to heat the entire property at full blast continuously. I told him to go ahead and prepare a formal estimate, assuring him I'd make a decision within a couple of days. He said he could have it all completed before the holidays. By Tuesday, I had to leave town for work. "Where are you off to this time?" Janice asked. "Up to Liverpool," I answered. "I'm taking an early train tomorrow. Straight to the hotel after that. The meeting's first thing Wednesday morning. I should be home again by Wednesday night," I added. "Driving yourself to the station?" she asked. "Yeah," I confirmed. "Good. Then I'll have the garage to myself," she said with a grin. "You should use it," I agreed. "And while I'm gone, maybe start thinking about how you'd like to use the new basement, love." "I'll think about it," Janice said, scrunching up her nose. "But I'm not going down there. It's like a freezer." Tuesday morning arrived cold and harsh. I followed the usual routine, warming water to pour over her frozen windshield. I also noticed the Renault's mileage had risen slightly, now reading 9,024 miles. At the front door, she gave me an especially long, lingering kiss goodbye. "Promise you'll call me once you're at the hotel, okay, sweetheart?" she said tenderly. "Just so I know you got there safe." "I will," I said. After she drove off, I packed a small overnight bag, tossed it onto the passenger seat of my Audi, and backed out of the driveway, pressing the remote to close the garage behind me. Janice had her own remote as well. When I got home Wednesday evening, Janice greeted me with extra warmth. "How did it go?" she asked. "Better than expected," I said. "They extended the contract another 2 years. Didn't even try to knock down the price. We can finally plan that big trip for next summer." "You were leaning toward the Seychelles," I reminded her. "But I'm thinking maybe Prague first, then a cruise along the Dalmatian coast." "I'll grab some travel brochures tomorrow," she said, practically bouncing with excitement. Truthfully, I was hoping she'd be satisfied with just Prague. Thursday morning brought another icy blast. As I carried the kettle outside to de-ice her windshield, I noticed the neighbors at number 10 had already gone overboard with Christmas decorations. It was right around then that a strange unease started creeping into my mind. The Renault's odometer should have shown at least 4 9-mile round trips, so around 9,160 miles, maybe more if she ran errands. Instead, it displayed just 9,000 miles, suggesting only 2 trips had been made, to the office and back. Had someone given her a ride? I distinctly recalled calling her at her office line, so she had definitely been at work. "Any problems with the car while I was away?" I asked casually. "Nope," she answered breezily. "Not even on Tuesday or Wednesday?" I pressed gently. "It drove fine?" "Absolutely," she said, a slight furrow appearing in her brow. "Why? I thought I heard a funny noise when you left," I said lightly. "Probably just the cold," she replied with certainty. "There weren't any problems." "Must have been my imagination," I said with a shrug. But deep down, I knew something didn't add up. Later that evening, sitting alone in my study, my doubts gnawed at me. Had Janice spent the night elsewhere? Was she hiding something? It didn't take long for me to find a solution, a discreet app that could track her phone's activity. That night, while she slept, I quietly connected her phone to my laptop. A few minutes later, I placed it back on the charger as if nothing had happened. From then on, I could monitor her calls, texts, and even her location. all from my own devices. Once she was asleep, I dove into the data. On Tuesday, her phone had gone to her office, but hadn't returned home that evening. Instead, it had crossed town and stayed put overnight while her car remained parked at her workplace, which explained why the odometer only showed 18 miles traveled. The only conclusion that made sense: she had spent the night at someone else's home, and it wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing either, since she hadn't swung by to grab clothes. Maybe she had stayed with a female friend, but if that were true, why lie about the car? She clearly knew I would be away all night, so if she had plans to meet up with someone, why wouldn't she just do it here? Was there any possible innocent explanation for what I was witnessing? That Sunday, while she was preoccupied, I took the opportunity to quietly scan through her phone messages. What I discovered shattered any last hope that I was misreading the situation. She was having an affair, and not just with anyone, but with her boss. She had even spent the night at his place. I had bumped into him once or twice before. He was pudgy, with thinning hair, hardly someone I'd consider serious competition. But the texts painted a different story. He was on track to be promoted to director early next year. With that promotion came the privilege of hiring a personal assistant. He could either bring someone new on board or simply promote Janice. It seemed obvious that a night at his house might tip the scales in her favor. Still, from the messages, it was clear she didn't want anything intimate happening at our home, particularly not in the marital bed. She worried I might come home unexpectedly. If she wasn't home, she could always claim she had stayed over at a friend's, but getting caught in the act in our own house would be a lot harder to explain away. Then, out of nowhere, she got a phone call. I listened closely. "I'm not coming in tomorrow, Janice," her boss said, sounding hoarse. "Pretty sure I've caught the flu." "Hopefully you didn't pass it on to me," she replied lightly. "Could be," he said. "I started feeling lousy on Tuesday night. We really should be more careful," she warned him. "Why?" "Catching the flu doesn't exactly scream affair," he joked. "That's not it," she said. "It's just... Neville asked about my car this morning. Probably nothing. Maybe I'm just being paranoid." "But you've got a garage, right?" he reminded her. "Good point," she agreed. "The neighbors wouldn't notice it missing for one night." "You're right. I'm probably overthinking it." "I'm no tech genius," he said. "But isn't there some app you could use? Like, Find My Phone? You could keep tabs on him that way." "That's smart," Janice said. "I'd feel a lot better if I could track him. I'm not too good with tech either, but I'll find someone who can set it up." It was a clever suggestion, but they were too late. I had already gotten ahead of them. Over the next week, I played it cool, keeping up appearances. Her phone stayed clean. No suspicious messages appeared. Of course, there was no way to know what went on during work hours, but from everything I could tell, they only met up outside of work when I was out of town. At the same time, we finished revamping the basement. The heating system was installed, and we treated ourselves to some early Christmas gifts, a massive TV and a DVD player. Janice and I would sometimes head downstairs to watch movies together. 2 big sofas and a low table created a really cozy atmosphere. There was no longer any argument about Christmas trees either. The real one went upstairs, and I claimed the basement with a bright artificial tree. We also replaced the old wooden basement door with a heavy-duty steel one in a matching frame. I told Janice it would have to open outward for now and that we'd fix it properly after the holidays. When the contractors installed it Friday night, Janice looked at it with a hint of suspicion. "Why a metal door?" she asked. "It's more stable structurally," I said casually. "It helps support the weight from above." She nodded, seeming to accept the explanation. It was a complete fabrication, of course, but it opens outward and has a Yale lock, she pointed out. If we forget our keys, we could get locked out. Plus, it's even got a letterbox. "It's only temporary," I reassured her smoothly. "The doorway's an odd size, so the contractor is making a custom door for us. For now, He loaned us this old one so we could start using the basement before Christmas, and he accidentally fitted it backward, I added with a shrug. But it'll all be sorted after New Year. Janice didn't look entirely convinced, but she didn't push it. Don't worry, I said. We've got a spare key inside. You and I will both carry one with our regular keys, and I've hung a third on a hook by the door. Just leave it there. It's only for emergencies. Oh, okay then, she said, seeming to relax a little. I really love the soft lighting down here, she said with a smile. It feels so romantic. I thought the same, I said. The curtains along the far wall make it even cozier. With the second Christmas tree lit up, you could almost pretend there's a big window behind them. I've also ordered 2 rugs, I told her. They should arrive in January, but the room's ready to enjoy now. It already feels great, she said warmly. It's so nice and warm. By the way, I added, I'll be heading to Edinburgh next Tuesday. Could you check the basement temperature every now and then? Of course, she agreed easily. This Scottish deal could really be a game changer for us, I said. If it goes through, we could take a long vacation next summer, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. If your boss approves that much time off, we could even visit the Seychelles in Eastern Europe, I teased. Wow, she laughed. I'm sure I could persuade him. I'm betting you could, I said with a grin. Before it slipped my mind, with Christmas just around the corner, I thought I'd take a few days to visit my mom while I was in Edinburgh. She lived just over the bridge in Dunfermline, as I mentioned casually. Sounds like a great idea, she said with a nod. When I get back, we'll throw down the new rugs, scatter some cushions, and dive into a movie marathon to properly break in the new sofas, I said, feeling cheerful. Both sofas? I'm counting the hours, she chuckled. The truth was, Janice and my mom never really saw eye to eye. Mom always hinted that she found Janice a bit sluggish. At the time, I chalked it up to the usual no one's good enough for my son routine. But thinking back, maybe she picked up on something I was blind to. Regardless, it felt right to visit before the holiday, especially since I had no genuine work reason to be heading to Scotland, and absolutely no desire to visit the damn Seychelles. Later that evening, Janice popped outside for something from her car, giving me the perfect chance to jump onto my computer. How does Tuesday night sound? I messaged. Come over to mine, she answered. We can finally test out the new couches downstairs. Has the basement renovation wrapped up? Her boss asked. Almost there, she wrote. Just a few rugs still on the way. So, you've finally shaken off your fear of getting cozy at home? He pushed. This time, yes, she replied with certainty. It's a lot easier now that I always know where he is, though the master bedroom remains strictly off limits, she added. He's heading to Edinburgh on Tuesday, she explained. There's no way he'll make it back in time to catch us. Tuesday it is, he responded eagerly. I'll bring you an early Christmas present. You'll have to unwrap it with your teeth, he joked. Can't wait, she giggled. Just make sure not to leave your car at the office. After we're done, I'll follow you to your place. You can leave your car there, jump into mine, and I'll drive us straight into my garage. That way, nobody sees you coming into the house. Crash overnight and I'll take you back to your car Wednesday morning. Perfect, she agreed. How long will he be away? He asked. A few days, probably until the weekend, she replied. He's going to visit his old dragon of a mother. Maybe I could stay over more than once, he suggested slyly. You better, she purred back. I want to be completely worn out before Santa gets here. Perfect. After I give you your gift, you'll be lucky to walk straight, he boasted. Sounds like you're getting the better end of the deal, she laughed. One thing, though, I expect to be paid at the top salary band, she said seriously. There are 2 starting rates. I want the higher one. I've done the research and I've earned it. The higher band is up to me, he replied, but there's still one last thing you have to prove. Oh? She said, raising an eyebrow. Haven't I already ticked every box? Almost, he grinned. But I've always had a thing for being pampered afterward. You cheeky sod, she cried. Will you? He pressed. Maybe, If you're on your absolute best behavior, she teased. I swear I will, he promised eagerly. On Saturday, I paid a visit to my tech-savvy friend Darren with a small plan in mind. Darren was usually broke. First thing, he gave my phone a once-over, and, sure enough, found a tracking app running. You've always got spare time and you're always keen for under-the-table cash jobs, right? I asked. Of course. I'm completely skint at the moment, so unless you're planning a murder, I'm your guy, he joked. No murders needed. I'll handle that myself, I laughed. The joke flew straight past him. Here's the setup. Tuesday morning I drive you to the train station. You take my phone, hop on a train to Edinburgh, and when you get to Waverley, you send a scheduled text. Then you kick back, 2 nights at the Cairn Hotel, hit some pubs, maybe buy a few Christmas gifts. Take the train back Thursday afternoon. Simple and clean. Edinburgh? That's bloody far, he grumbled. Exactly. I nodded. If anything goes sideways and we can't meet, just hand the phone over to the lost property desk at Waverley before you head home. But if everything clicks, I'll meet you Wednesday, you'll hand back the phone, and we'll go get properly smashed. All right. But how much are you paying? He asked. The train fare and hotel are on my credit card. I'll give you $200 in cash up front and another $200 when it's done, I said. Deal, he said without hesitation. On my way home, I stopped off to get 2 extra copies of my front door key made. By Monday, I felt like I was running purely on adrenaline. Tuesday morning, I started up Janice's car again. Didn't even bother checking the mileage this time. It was a pointless obsession anyway. While she was brushing her teeth, I slipped into her handbag, replaced the basement key with a duplicate front door key, and switched the spare behind the door as well. Yale keys all look the same anyway, don't they? Once she had left for work, I drove Darren to the train station and then checked into a nearby hotel. The afternoon darkness closed in quickly after 4 o'clock, and by past, I was already slipping quietly into Blueberry Way. To any casual observer, it would have seemed entirely unremarkable. The heating had just kicked in, a gentle hum filling the house. I set a recording to play on my old, trusty dictaphone. The device ran on batteries, and I made certain it was fully charged so the message could loop several times without interruption. Tucking it into my pocket, I made my way down to the basement. Janice had already queued up a movie for the evening, something chosen carefully to set the tone. Every last detail was meticulously prepared. The wrong set of house keys was deliberately left out, right where it needed to be. The place was cozy and warm, and my mobile phone was safely sitting back in Edinburgh. I settled into my home office to wait, a room she had no reason to ever enter. On my computer, a live mirror of her phone's screen flickered softly. A text buzzed through from her husband. Hey babe, made it to Edinburgh. We'll call around 10 p.m. from the hotel. Love you. Not long after, I watched her location update as she left work and made her way toward her boss's home. My mind wandered back to how this all began, sparked by a curious jump on her car's odometer. Now, everything was balancing on a razor's edge. What if they decided to stay at his house? She had intended to return here, but plans could change in a heartbeat. She remained at his place longer than expected. Maybe he was gathering some things to bring over, or maybe they were already getting cozy. Just when I started to second-guess everything, her phone finally began moving again. Relief hit me, but it didn't last. They weren't heading back home. Damn it. They turned toward the city center, sending a new surge of panic through me. But that subsided once I recognized the street. They were only stopping for pizza. Take these downstairs under the stairs, she told him once they returned. I'll open some wine, he called back. This door opens funny, he added, sounding puzzled. Don't worry, she soothed. There are plenty of keys. I listened to the sound of a cork popping, glasses clinking, the familiar rituals of settling in. I remained frozen in place, giving them time to get comfortable. I didn't hear the basement door latch, but that was no concern. I could handle that myself later. I gave them about 10 minutes, enough for the food, wine, and flirtation to distract them. I checked my pocket for all 3 basement keys, grabbed the dictaphone, and slipped down the new carpeted stairs. Leaning around the doorframe, I surveyed the scene. Her boss was lounging on the couch in nothing but silk boxers, a glass of my best red wine dangling from his hand. Janice, half-dressed, reclined beside him as he traced patterns on her bare skin with the wine. She nibbled a slice of pizza, a meat feast, fittingly. The sight of her in black stockings and suspenders knocked the wind out of me. She had never worn anything like that for me. She must have changed after work. The only light came from the twinkling Christmas tree. On the TV, a paused movie scene showed an actress wearing almost identical stockings. "Brought you another Christmas present," I shouted, holding up the cassette player. Their reaction was beyond anything I could have hoped for. He flailed, managing to splash wine into his own eyes. Janice dropped her pizza slice straight onto her tiny black thong, plenty left for him to find, assuming he could see anything in the dark. As they sat there gaping at me, I set the dictaphone down just inside the doorway. They barely managed a confused, "What?" before I stepped back and slammed the door shut. They were locked in, and just to be sure, I turned the double lock. I paused, listening. Did I mention the basement was soundproofed? Even standing close, the frantic hammering on the steel door was barely audible. Eventually, I heard them scrambling, probably throwing on some clothes. Janice tried the lock with her key, then the spare. No luck. From the inside, they didn't stand a chance. I thought I heard the dictaphone being picked up. Their voices rose, panic setting in. I had one last move before leaving. Beside the basement door, a switch waited. I flipped it, cutting off the electricity. Instant blackout. The lights, the TV, the DVD player, all dead in an instant. They wouldn't be finishing their movie or anything else. Their phones were useless. The underfloor heating would hold some warmth, but not forever. The only thing still working down there was the cassette player I had left behind. I climbed the stairs. Once I closed the door at the top, their shouting and banging faded to nothing. A few final steps remained, retrieving the dictaphone later, disposing of Janice's front door keys, and making that crucial call to the police. I already had the story prepared. We had a huge argument, officer. She demanded I leave for Christmas. I'd warned her time and time again to double-check she had the right keys. There were 2 sets. I had been planning to change the locks that very week to make the doors lockable from the inside. The house stood silent and still as I made my way back toward the hotel. Tomorrow would come early. I had a train to catch back to Edinburgh. "But you said he was already in Edinburgh," Janice cried out later. "He was," her boss replied grimly. "Maybe he caught a flight back. I told you, there was always something off about him." "You should have listened to your gut," she hissed. "Oh, right, just toss all the blame my way," he shot back. "That's really going to fix anything now?" Her voice quivered as she asked, "How long do you think he'll keep us stuck down here?" "Not too long," he answered, doing his best to sound steady. "He just wants to make a point." "I suppose. It's all part of the game," she said, her voice uncertain. At that moment, a recording crackled to life. "Hey, sweetheart," it purred. "Nice job convincing your little Romeo you're completely his. By the way, it's supposed to get real cold tonight. The forecast says we're looking at freezing temperatures. You'll need to find some way to stay cozy. Anyway, I'm off to Scotland now, planning to stick around through the weekend. Might even stay until Hogmanay since, my mom's half Scottish. I'll see you after New Year's. Not that you'll see me. Be a darling and send my love to Mom, will you?" As the calendar flipped to the new year, 9 Blueberry Way stayed eerily silent. On January 2nd, the folks over at number 10 packed away their Christmas lights and festive decorations. Meanwhile, mail started piling up behind the door at number 9, and eventually the postman stopped bothering to deliver. Mrs. Thornton from number 7 was the first to grow uneasy. She noticed she hadn't spotted the Hamiltons since sometime before Christmas, and Janice's car still sat untouched in the garage. When the police came knocking on January 8th, they found a house that seemed almost frozen in time. A few dirty cups abandoned in the sink, a bed carefully made, and a Christmas tree, long since gone dark, standing in the living room corner. It wasn't until 3 days later, when forensic teams shifted the welcome mat in the cupboard under the stairs, that they discovered the hidden hatch. Below it, they uncovered the grim secret the basement had been hiding. The coroner's report was unambiguous. Both had succumbed to hypothermia roughly 2 weeks earlier. The man had evidently tried to smash the door open with a dictaphone. Its shattered remains were found close by. The woman's fingertips were torn and her nails were broken, heartbreaking evidence of her frantic attempts to claw her way out. I first learned about the case in the Edinburgh Gazette. By then, I was already settled in a flat in Leith, working the phones at a call center. Darren had moved on as well. Last I heard, he was somewhere down in Spain. Just yesterday, I found out the house had finally been sold. Somewhat surprisingly, 9 Blueberry Way fetched a respectable price, all things considered. I imagine the real estate agent decided not to mention the little detail about the basement. 9 has always been a lucky number for me, after all. I used my share of the money to book a flight to Prague. I'm going alone. The Seychelles never really called to me anyway. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend.